As we move on to the cross lace, the most important thing to remember is that this first section will be the toughest and that each section will get easier from there on. The main reason for this is that you're dealing with 13 to 15 inches of string, and pulling all of that slack through when you tie one little knot takes a lot of time, but once you get through with that, it gets easier and easier. Just a few things before we get started. When I string a traditional stick, I like to string it from the back because that's the way the cross lace is attaching to the leather, from behind it first, so it just makes more sense to me. The next thing is I like to put the stick in between my knees to anchor it as I string it. I just find that's been the easiest for me, but for some of you guys, you might find that putting it on a shaft may work better for you. The next thing is that I like to string it in about 3 sections. This first section, you're going to start with the cross lace at the top, connect it to the sidewall, and then you have to cut a hole in the leather here at the bottom to attach the cross lace to. So when you're doing this, obviously get some supervision if you need it, because you'll need to be taking a knife and cutting through the leather. And this is exactly why you're going to need to use a pen to mark it, because we have to take the leather out of the hole we just put it in to then put it on a table, cut the hole in it, and attach the string. So that's the first section, this first part. The next one, you're going to take the cross lace and weave up between these 2 leathers, weave back down, and then you'll have to cut another hole in a leather right there to attach the string, and that's going to finish off your second section. The third and final section, you go up in between these 2 leathers, back down, and attach to the sidewall. So the reason I split them up like that is because the most difficult part of doing traditional is going to be cutting that hole in the leather, and there's 2 holes that divide the stick up into 3 sections, so that's how I like to look at it. But let's take our cross lace and get started on this first section. So as we get started here with our cross lace, we're going to take it and tie another double barrel knot, just like we did to the sidewall string. Loop it around your thumb 2 times, put it through the loops, pull tight, and now we are going to stick the other end of the cross lace through that top hole of the head, the same hole that we put our sidewall string into when we first started. So now, like I said, you've got 13 to 15 inches of string. You've got to pull all that through as you get started. Now, I'm looking here from the back. You're going to attach the cross lace from behind around the top of the leather here. Pull that cross lace through. And pull tight. You see here from the back, we attach the cross lace to the first leather here on the side, just where the leather overlaps itself, and you're actually wrapping it around 2 levels of leather. So pull it tight, attach it to your first space that you allotted on the sidewall, pull all that string through, and pull it tight. Once we're done with that, make sure to pull tight not only on the cross lace, but also on the leather you're attaching the lace to. That way you make sure you've got the utmost of tension in your stick as you string it, and you're stringing the pocket to the depth that it's going to end up being. So now, to attach it to the leather, again, you come from behind, cross over the leather, go back up through, and pull all that cross lace back through again. The more diamonds you make, the easier it gets to string. Now we're going to continue on down in that first sidewall. You're going to attach the cross lace to that first space allotted, to the second space, and you're going to actually skip the third right there because I have 7 spaces and you only need 6. So that's just the way the spacing worked out on my superpower. But if it works out differently on the head that you have, then that's fine. As you move your way down the head, make sure that you keep your spacing equal, about 1.5 inches, maybe a little bit less, in between each of these sections, and make sure you're pulling tight every time that you attach to the sidewall. After you have this first sidewall done, pull the leather a little bit just to make sure that it's all good and tight. And then what we're going to have to do is attach this string here through the middle of the leather in a hole that we're going to create right now. So what you're going to have to do is take this leather that you just worked on out of the bottom of your stick. Luckily it's all right because we marked it with pens, so when we put it back in we know where it's supposed to go. But what we're going to do is, on this leather, just about 1 centimeter above where it goes in to the bottom of the stick, we're going to mark it with a pen, put this leather onto a cutting board or onto a hard surface, cut a little hole, and then attach the cross lace through that hole. Once you have your hole made, you can attach the leather back to the head of the stick, and we have it all marked out with pens so you know exactly where the leather should go back to. Attaching your cross lace through the hole in the leather is probably one of the most difficult parts of stringing this type of traditional, but it really doesn't have to be. Once you practice it a couple of times, it's not that hard. So what you're going to do is take your cross lace, put it through the hole that you just made, through the front of the leather, starting with the shiny side. You're going to come out the back of the leather, wrap your cross lace around the leather from the front, and put it right back through that hole, tighten it, and move on. And now that you have that out of the way, we can move on to part 2, where you focus on the next 2 sections of cross lace. Now in part 2, we're going to take this cross lace, attach it to the adjacent leather, and then back to our holes right here that we've generated already with the cross lace. So again, to attach the cross lace to the leather, you're going to come around the back of the leather, loop under the piece of cross lace, just like that, and pull through all that cross lace. Tighten that loop that you just made by pulling up, and attach back to the next connection that you see there on the first leather. The way that you attach the cross lace to one of these loops right here is by going right through that hole that you see next to the leather and the cross lace. So you go in through that nice little hole, pull all your cross lace through, making sure to tighten, as always, your cross lace and the leathers as you go through the process, making sure to keep the tension in the string. So you're going to repeat that process all the way up the leather until you get to the top. After you connect to this loop, you're going to run the cross lace through the hole here at the top of the leather, and then wind your way back down these 2 leathers. So now you can see after we finish this section here, we've got our first area of full diamonds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You want them to be as evenly sized as possible and to make sure that the cross lace is pulled tight at all times. At the end here, you're going to put the cross lace through this little hole that the leather creates for itself up here at the top of the head, and you're going to zigzag back down to connect these two middle layers, and that's going to finish off part 2. Now at the bottom of part 2, you see we've got 2 rows of diamonds, and here at the bottom, we're going to have to attach our cross lace the same way we did here on the first leather by cutting a slit in the middle of this leather about 1 centimeter up from the bottom. After you guys finish part 2, the hardest part is definitely over. You need to lace back up and down one more time, but then you've got the basis of your pocket, and all you need to do is the shooting strings and my modification to the bottom. To finish off the last section of cross lace, you want to make sure that when you're attaching the leather to the sidewall, that you're pulling the pocket just enough to leave these 4 leathers right in the center of the stick. So you don't want to pull it too tight and have the leather be all the way over here, and you don't want it to be too loose so that you've got this big gap over here. So you want to pull it just enough to leave these 4 leathers right in the center. Finally, when you finish off your last section, you should see all of your diamonds here spaced evenly, but you'll also see that you have a really small pocket, but that's okay. What we're going to do here is put a lacrosse ball in the stick. I'm sure you guys have done this before. You're going to take a butter knife or a screwdriver, wedge it in between the ball and the stick, center it where you want it in the pocket, and what we're going to do is leave this overnight so that we get the form and shape that we want in our pocket. When we get back, what we will do is put in our shooting strings as well as make that modification to the bottom.